Well, the Biden administration today unveiling prices for the first 10 prescription drugs subject to Medicare negotiations. The discounts range from 38 to nearly 80%. The administration estimates this move will save Medicare $6 billion, in patients $1.5 billion when pricing takes effect in 2026. Still, the discounts could be smaller than they appear since Medicare's net prices are already below sticker price. Merck's Januvia and Novo Nordisk's Fiasp will, for diabetes, will see the steepest discounts of 79 and 76%, respectively. Other diabetes and arthritis drugs from AstraZeneca, Immunex, and Boehringer are also getting discounted by almost 70%. Pharma stocks impacted by today's news did end the day mostly higher. Merck and Novartis did close in the red, while AstraZeneca, Bristol Myers, and Novo all finished firmly in the green. For more, let's bring in Mizuho healthcare sector strategist Jared Holz. Jared, great to have you with us. And part of the lack of reaction is just that some of the drugs were going to go and become generic in a matter of years anyway. So the drug makers were going to lose that revenue in short order.
Melissa, great to see you. Yeah, I think that's definitely part of the conversation today. We've been awaiting this list for a while. We knew the drugs that were going to be impacted. We didn't know the pricing variance, but we found that out this morning. And yeah, I think most of the drugs on this list, if not all of the 10, will see some sort of generic competition, loss of patent exclusivity before the end of the decade. So these are drugs that the street had been modeling, pretty significant declines for anyway. And so the price decreases that we're going to see at the hands of the government, I think were just not taken all that negatively by investors today.
This is just the first chapter, though, in this whole sort of notion that the government can negotiate with drug companies. There will be 60 drugs that could be subject to negotiation by 2029. I would imagine this would not help profitability of the drug companies. And we've already heard from various companies that this sort of changes the calculus on what drug trials they actually conduct, what drugs they actually launch into market. What do you think the impact will be? I mean, this is just sort of the surface of it, but this is a story that we're going to see play out over the coming years.
Yeah, for sure. This is a situation in perpetuity. I read a few pieces this morning saying, this was the best case scenario for pharma. I'm not really sure. I don't think this is good at all. I think the fact that the stocks trade at low multiples is one reason why they're able to kind of digest, updates like this. But as you alluded to, we're going to see another 15 drugs get impacted for calendar 27, another 15 for 28, 20 beyond that. This is a situation that we are going to talk about every year for the foreseeable future. So yes, the first 10, maybe the impact not big, but companies like Bristol Myers, Merck, Novartis, and several others have already said this kind of changes the dynamic at which they invest in R&D and M&A. So I agree with all of that.
Well, what does that mean, change the dynamic? Because I would look at this and say this is more of a reason to be acquisitive as opposed to less. I mean, what's your thoughts for specifically a name? Well, if your name isn't Eli Lilly or Novo Nordisk, what are your thoughts around Bristol, Pfizer, Merck, and some of the others?
Agree. It either, keeps things at status quo. And I think, most of the large cap pharma companies, Guy, are looking, daily at various M&A targets. It's part of the core strategy. It has to be. But when you look at the price cuts that are coming in, not only for 26, but 27 and through the end of the decade and further than that, it's going to accelerate M&A. I think the one thing that a lot of biotech investors can kind of agree on is that the pace of play with respect to business development is likely going to increase rather than decrease from here. For the vast majority of companies here, maybe Lilly and Novo don't have as much urgency given what we know about their obesity franchises and otherwise, but all the others do.
But with Lilly and Novo, obviously the concern would be the weight loss drugs become subject to price negotiation. When should we start factoring that into that story and the multiples?
Well, I think semaglutide for Novo is going to be part of this list in 2027. So pretty soon, actually. How much that changes the dynamic by which investors look at the stock is debatable. I think the one thing that you can kind of point to here is the fact that even with pretty significant price cuts, let's assume 30%, 40% price cuts for a drug like Ozempic in the latter part of the decade, you can still get to this $100 billion market given the population. And that's just in the US. That doesn't even include Europe or Asia.